Okay, so hey everyone. Been a little while since a video, but today we're going to talk about mixing jazz drums. And the reason I'm doing jazz is just because I feel like it doesn't get covered very often on YouTube actually. And there's other things you kind of want to consider. And like everything on this channel, we're going to try and talk about things in a musical way and apply the skills I'm going to kind of talk about against other instruments and see if they're working for the music. So let's get into it. Okay, so as you can see, I've got Pro Tools open here, and there's not a huge amount of drum tracks here. No, there wasn't loads of mics used basically. And you might be wondering why I've got this bass track in, but when we're mixing drums, we're always kind of referring to bass as well. So I've just chucked that in there so we can compare it against something to see if it's going to translate well, especially in the kick and bass relationship. So let's just see what we've got. So let me play the tracks individually. So this is the kick. So you can hear a little bit of bleed from the ride cymbal, but that's okay. Then we got overhead left, and these are all panned in the center at the minute, so they're all mono. And overhead right, which is probably going to be similar. A little bit more focus on the ride cymbal there because he's playing, the ride cymbal is on his right hand side. Then we've got this mid-kit mic, so that was a ribbon mic. A little bit darker, a little bit trashier, but you should be able to hear that now. So that's quite nice and vibey, I think anyway. Sorry, my voice keeps cracking today. And then we've got this shoulder mic, which is also a ribbon. Let's have a listen to that. So there's quite a nice bit of snare in that, isn't there? I think we'd agree. So that's going to become useful in the mix later on. Okay, so now what I want to talk about is phase. And I feel like this gets overlooked sometimes. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our overheads here. So you can see, just see them here and here. So let me just highlight this so we can see there's a real clear transient here and it's probably a snare. Now, what I like to do with phase is some people just get the track and drag it around and move it. I don't like to do that personally. I like to kind of keep the editing consistent. So we can zoom in and let's just have a look. So the phase is pretty good really. But what we can do is we can look for a peak. So we can see there's a nice peak here. And just try and compare it against the other overhead. So I think it's always a little bit of guesswork, but you should be able to hear the result. So I think this peak here on the overhead left and this peak here on the overhead right correspond. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to measure the distance there between the peak here and the peak here. And I've got this set to samples in Pro Tools, and we can see that the length I've selected is 26 samples there. So what that means is we need to delay this right overhead by 26 samples. And that's really easy to do in Pro Tools. We can just go to delay, time adjuster, and just pop in. Oh, that was lucky. That was a good guess. We can go to 26, hit enter, and there we go. So what we should be able to hear now is I'll just solo out the overheads, and I'll bring this plugin in and out, and it should become more kind of coherent and just sound a little bit stronger. I think you'll hear it in the snare hopefully, and any kind of weird overtones in the cymbals, it should get rid of those. This is going to be very subtle, so make sure you're using some high quality headphones or speakers if you can. So here we go. So I'll start with the plugin off, and then I'll bring it in, and you should be able to hear the difference. So that's really a massive difference, isn't it, to the tone of the cymbals. When the plugin's engaged and we've got that phase kind of corrected, the ride cymbal becomes fuller and more direct, which in jazz is what we want because the ride is kind of the it's kind of the hi-hat to rock and roll. Do you know what I mean? It powers through and keeps the momentum moving forward. And the snare just becomes a little bit fatter as well. We get a bit more tone out of the snare. So it's definitely really important to check your phase when you've got pairs of mics capturing the same source. It really helps to contribute to a more kind of musical mix, which is kind of what I'm about, really. Now we've done that, let's give ourselves a basic mix in mono. So we're going to go through, so we'll just have the drums solo. I'm going to create a little drum group. So you just go Command G, call this our drums here. There we go. So let's just do a basic mix, and we're going to do no panning. This is all in mono. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. I like the balance, and I like that the kit is tuned so low that it kind of resonates. So actually, we can afford to have that a little bit louder because it lacks that attack, and that's going to be really nice in adding some sustain underneath. So now we've got a basic mix. Let's kind of just predict the panning that we're going to want. So these mics are an A/B pair basically. So we're going to have our kick in the center. I think we can agree on that. Overhead left is probably going to be hard left and hard right. The mid kit, so that's a mic in the middle of the drum kit. So again, maybe because it's got that snare and maybe a bit of attack on the front of the kick, we might want that in the center. Now the shoulder mic was over the right hand side of the drummer's shoulder, so maybe we can just put that off to the right a little bit, and it might give us a nice. It might just give us a nice bit of space in the kit, I think, because this is becoming very kind of mono at the minute. So let's just have a listen to that with that panning in. So that's given us a really strong kind of mono center, but also given us a nice bit of vibe as well in separating it out. So the next thing I'd like to do now we're mixing the kit is check this kick against some bass. So we've got two bass mics, we've got a 414 and we've got a 47 FET. So let's bring in the bass. We'll start with the FET actually. Let me swap these around. So I'll just bring it in and let's see how it's kind of battling with the double bass, and that will determine whether we want our kick to be full of low end or filtered out and a little bit tighter. So let's have a listen. So I think we can leave that kick and bass relationship kind of as it is. So the bass is deep, but it's also quite warm. So we're obviously not going for this huge scoop sound. We're going for this kind of mid-present sound with a nice kind of rounded bottom end. If anything, maybe we can filter out a little bit of low end in the double bass. But I really like the tuning of this kick drum because it's kind of adding, with the kick and snare, it's adding that kind of like salt and pepper. And you've just got the ride kind of relentlessly like going through the track. Okay, so now we've decided how the relationship between the kick and bass is going to work. Let's actually get into mixing some of these sounds. So I'm going to start with an EQ for this kick, and let's just have a look what's going on. So as we can see, it's very deep, kind of around 56, 60 hertz, around there. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to roll off a little bit of this sub. I'm probably going to take off some of this top end as well, actually, just for the bleed as well. I don't feel like we need it. And actually, it sounds really good around that frequency. So let's just help that sustain along a bit with a little bump. So let's see how that sounds. So I might try and get a little bit more attack out of there as well. So I'm hearing that kind of around this 2K mark. Let's just have a listen. But I don't want to bring out too much bleed in the cymbals. So that's nice around there. And then there's also some low end out of the ride cymbal coming in actually. So I'm going to try and filter that out, and I'm feeling it's around this low mid, and you'll hear what I mean. You hear that there? It just sounds like noise really. So let's just kind of scoop that out and leave that like that. In fact, I might make that a little bit subtler. Actually, we're only taking off 3 dB here, so that's okay. So let's go to these overheads now, and I'm going to start with the 1 in mono, and then I'm going to paste that over to my right. So let's have a little look. Let's see what's going on. So I think we can filter off a little bit of low end. There's enough kind of air in these cymbals, I don't think we need to add any more actually, but I'd like to get a bit more of a direct attack out of the ride cymbal, so let's try that. There it is, did you hear that? The kind of stick attack comes back when we boost this 1.5K. And then I'm going to take out some of this kind of 500, so you'll hear the difference that makes. Again, it's just that kind of ringing noise. And if you want detail in the kind of melody and lead instruments, and especially in articulation in the double bass, we're going to try and reduce these kind of frequencies where we can. And I might actually just leave this, leave a little bit of low end in there. I like it a bit more natural maybe. So let's paste that over to the right and see how that works between the 2 overheads. So you'll hear then when I bypass the EQ, it kind of became all airy and no kind of detail and stick attack. So let's just have a listen to this mid-kit mic as well and see what we can do with that in terms of EQ. So we can definitely get rid of some low end in here. It's quite dark, but I'm going to keep that darkness in, and I'm actually going to play on that, I think. See, so I like that little bump in the mid-range there. And then let's try this shoulder mic as well. Let's see what that's doing. So you hear that detail in the snare there, just about 2K. I think that's really nice. Again, that helps to emphasize that kind of salt and pepper in there. So let's listen to this drum kit mix now. And this is just with EQ, and we're going to bypass the plugins first, and then we'll bring them in and we'll see how much cleaner it sounds. So I guess what I'm trying to show you here is that we don't have to make huge EQ curves and moves, and we don't even have to reach to compression really. Jazz is that kind of style where we don't want it super squashed and compressed. We want to retain that the dynamics and the dynamic changes in the music. So I am going to go to compression next, and I'm going to use FabFilter again. But I'm just showing you that with really subtle changes, we can make a big difference to how clean this drum mix comes across. So let's go into compression now. So with the kick, I think what we can do is we can elongate the sustain of the kick. I think that's going to be the best thing to do. So I know we've got loads of sustain already, but let's play on it because it's working so well. So let's take that kick again. So what we can do with the compressor is we can have a slower attack to emphasize the transient. That's going to give us a bit more of a bit more attack actually. And we can have quite a fast release, so the compressor is going to stop working quickly and it's going to allow the drum kit just to breathe a little bit. In terms of threshold, I might try and take maybe 3 or 4 dB, nothing too drastic here. So I think that's nice with a 4:1 ratio. I think that's good. Now let's have a look at these overheads. I might actually try and take some sustain away from these, purely because we've got a lot of kind of sizzle, and I don't want that to just colour over everything in the mix, basically. So let's just have a listen. So here's the overheads without any compression. So again, let's pan this to the center and let's have a play around with this compressor. So instead of clean, I might go for the opto setting actually. So let's have a look. I'm going to bring the ratio down slightly, maybe 3. This isn't exact, so let's just have a play with this, see what we can do. So that's nice, it's just giving it a little bit of life and a little bit of movement in there, I feel. So let's paste that over and have a listen. It's definitely just adding a little bit of excitement, I feel. So with these mid-kit mics, I think we can really push it and we can go for quite a heavy vibe here. So let's have a look what we can do. Again, with the same compressor. So I'm just showing you don't need to have loads of fancy tools for this. You can just use one compressor for everything and get to know it really well. So let's go for this punch setting. Let's try that. Going to go for something kind of middle of the road with the attack and release here. The ratio I might bump up a little bit and the threshold's quite strong. You know, we're doing quite a bit of gain reduction here. So I love what that's doing to the snare. So let's just have a listen to this shoulder mic. So again, that's just like quite a lot of vibe, I think, there. So let's put these two in and listen together at the excitement we're kind of creating in the mix. So with the rest of the kit and the overheads, that's going to kind of give us a balance of this clean, crisp top end and loads of vibe in the mid-range. So let's have a listen. And I'll bypass the plugins. So there we go. With some really basic tools, with just using EQ and compression, we can really tidy up our drum kit sound, and we can also add energy and excitement in there, which I think is really important when we're mixing. But I'm really glad I covered this today with jazz, only because you don't find many videos like this, and we're not going for super crazy production, like we're not going for sample replacing or anything like that. I'm really trying to retain the drummer's kind of natural sound and how he plays the kit and presents that on the record. I'm just trying to keep things clean and kind of emphasize any energy that is in there. And obviously there is a lot of energy going on in this track. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. And if you want to see more content like this, remember to like and subscribe, comment and let me know what you thought. And if there's anything you want to see in the future, We've got the stems for the whole EP here. So if you want to go through it track by track, we can do that. And let me know if there's anything else you just want covering. Thanks so much for your time, and thank you for watching. See you next time.